Welcome to Perimeter Institute's Inspiring Future Women in Science live Q&A. My name is Kelly Foyle, and I'm a physicist and member of Perimeter's Educational Outreach team. I'm joining you today from my home in Waterloo, Ontario, in Canada. Today is the United Nations International Day of Women and Girls in Science. To celebrate this day, we have panelists joining us from 4 different cities in 2 countries, and we have registered attendees from 20 countries. We're also pleased to welcome Linamar Corporation as the presenting sponsor of today's event. Perimeter Institute is located in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, and as such, in the spirit of respect and reconciliation, we acknowledge that the Institute is located upon lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. In particular, we acknowledge the Haldimand Tract, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Attawandaron, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. As settlers, we thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We are connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. Wherever you are in the world, I encourage you to consider who has come before you and the impact of their actions and actions taken towards them, as well as the potential of your own actions to build a more inclusive future for everyone. This event is about you and your questions, so your participation is central to making this discussion a success. You can submit your questions using the Q&A icon. So let's get started. To start us off, I was hoping to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. Rupali, let's start with you.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Rupali Chaudhary. I am the founder and CEO of a grassroots nonprofit organization called Lotus STEM. Our aim is to create a networking and leadership platform for South Asian women in science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine. Besides that, I am also a senior scientist at a small biotech company called Alarda Life Science. I'm also a research associate at McMaster University in the Department of Biology, and I'm a content editor at SciIllustrate, writing about women in science throughout history.
Awesome, thanks. Wow, that's quite the list. Mina, let's go to you.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you. My name is Mina. I grew up in a small village in Greece. After I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Athens, I went to the US to do a PhD in theoretical physics at the University of Stanford. At Stanford University, and now I find myself faculty doing research at the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo.
Great. Okay, we'll go on to Jessica.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me. My name is Jessica Schaub. I'm Alberta Métis. I grew up on Treaty 6 territory in rural northern Alberta. I am now a master's student at the University of British Columbia. I'm joining you today from the Vancouver campus, which is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. I am a biological oceanographer, and I specialize in jellyfish ecology. So I am very excited to be here speaking today.
Awesome, thanks. And last but not least, Tiara.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tiara Fletcher, and I'm a structural design engineer, specifically an aerospace engineer. And I work for a top aerospace engineering company here in the United States. I'm from the state of Georgia, and I went on to college to complete my undergraduate degree in aerospace engineering. After then, started with the company as a structural analysis engineer, and then I became a structural engineer / manufacturing engineer to then become a structural design engineer, and I'm also completing my Master's of Engineering Management from Duke University. And in addition to that, I also do motivational speaking through an organization called Rocket with the Fletchers. It's an organization that me and my husband started in order to motivate students to follow their dreams. And I also have a book coming out called Wonder Woman of Science with my co-author, Ginger Rue.
We also had some questions. We have some questions coming in, but we also had some questions that came in from registration. So I think I'll start with one of those. Jane asked from Canada, throughout post-secondary, especially as an undergraduate student, how did you network and seek out professional opportunities? Does anybody feel like starting that one off? Sure, go for it, Tiara.
So throughout my undergraduate career, I made an effort to make sure that I was certain about my major in aerospace engineering. In order to do so, I completed externships, internships, and also research opportunities that were available at the Institute. By doing those externships and internships, I had a chance to gain real life experience in various different companies doing various different things in order to figure out what I didn't like and, of course, discover what I did like. So taking advantage of those opportunities, using all of the connections that you have in your undergraduate career, from your professors to your counselors, your advisors, and even your peers, they all have a great amount of information to offer you so that you can pursue those opportunities yourself.
Awesome. Jessica, I wonder, you're kind of in the thick of it right now. Like you're kind of, well, you're past the undergraduate level, but you've kind of just finished that undergraduate level and you're going on. Do you have any insight on things that you've just recently experienced, or?
Yeah, I would say I echo what Tiara said. It's really important to get involved. People aren't going to find you magically. You have to put yourself out there, try new things, meet new people. So just be open about what it is that you're interested in. Don't be afraid to try things that maybe don't seem like something you would like at first, but they might lead down a really great path. That's all I can think of for now. Does someone else have something to add?
That's great. Oh, yes, Rupali, of course. Yeah, just go for it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if we were like all raising hands to answer or not. I just wanted to add, so I was a very shy undergraduate student. As a immigrant in Canada, I didn't necessarily know how to navigate the space when it came to university. I was living away from home, so I am from Waterloo, but I went to U of T to do my undergraduate, and I lived in residence. And I think that was the network that really helped me, is just talking to my peers who lived in residence with me and just learning from them and being open to opportunities. That's where I got the confidence to actually go and talk to a professor, and that was my foot in the door into academia, and that's what led me into being able to get a master's and then a PhD. But as an introvert and someone who is fairly shy amongst new people, it's a lesson that you have to learn, and it's a skill that you do have to build.
Maybe related to that question, we've had a question come in from Lucy. You mentioned, going on to do the PhD, and she asked, what is it like to complete a PhD? Maybe you and Mina would like to comment a bit on that.
Well, I can say, it's not easy, and you better not do it if you don't like it.
It's exhausting.
It's pretty exhausting, and it will bring out every little fear you have. But it can be very rewarding. And the most important thing when doing it is remembering that you do it because you really like something. And that should be in everything, and that should be your driving force. And don't let all those little fears stop you. That's true also what we said before about what do you do in undergrad. Do not abandon something just because of the fear of failure. That's not, actually I've learned much more for the things I haven't done well from the things I have done well.
Yeah, I will echo that. As exhausting as doing a PhD can be, some of my favorite memories are actually during that time of getting my PhD. It's that love of the subject, and it's the drive that you have because you want to learn more about it. You're there because it's a choice. It isn't necessarily, doing a PhD is not, don't do it if your heart isn't in it. Otherwise, why would you put yourself through going through that much schooling when you can actually go and get a well-paying job, or you could get a position that is still within the field that you're interested in? You don't have to do a PhD. There's nothing stating that this is the only way to be successful. So, but at the same time, you make some of the fondest memories, and some of your best friends come from doing a PhD.
We have a question coming in from Ayla. What can one do to stand out in competitive fields like the ones that you're in? Anybody feel like commenting on that? Yeah, sure, Mina, go for it.
Okay, so the most important thing is follow your instincts. Don't go by what the trends are, what you think that you should be working on. The only way to make your mark is to find your own identity. And you don't find that identity if you're not willing to go against trends. That's the only way you can stand out. It may work, it may not. That's the other thing. But most of the time, that's actually the secret behind standing out. Just don't listen to anyone else.
And also, just to echo that, that was fantastic advice. I would also say, as you're standing out, as you're not listening to anyone who has anything negative to say about you, make sure that you are also following your passion. When you're passionate about something, there's just the results are amazing, right? You're passionate, you're driven, you're putting in all of the extra time and effort in order to craft yourself in such a way that you become successful. So make sure that you're passionate about whatever competitive field you're looking at pursuing.
Yeah, I can add to that. I live my life by passion. I feel like people don't get into jellyfish ecology because they're not passionate about it. So I would say that alone makes you stand out in an application, especially when, I mean, it depends on what you're applying to, but something that receives 50 to 100 applications, you know, after a while, they all start to look the same. You have research experience, you've done such and such courses, you've done this degree. The things that'll make you stand out are the things that you do just because you're interested in them and not because it's what everyone else does to get experience.
Great. We have a question coming in from Mesha. She asks, how do you find school life balance in fields that require large time investments? So I think this would also be work-life balance as well, depending on how we would want to interpret it for ourselves.
So I actually have an interesting approach on how I approach my school life balance back in undergrad. I discovered that there's a lot going on in undergrad, especially when you're just coming from high school, you're going into this environment of independence that you have not experienced before, okay? And there's just so much going on around you. There's so many things that you want to try, so many organizations and clubs that you want to join, but you also have so many classes to take and so many academic commitments to make. So how do you balance all of this? You have to find your rhythm. And for me, it was by having a very structured schedule down to the minute. So for me, I wanted to join all of these different organizations, but I had to prioritize. I had to prioritize from my classes and then from there, figure out which organizations were the most important to me. By doing so, I was able to schedule in, okay, when is study time? When do I have to complete this assignment? When can I go to that club meeting? When can I go to that very cool event that's happening this Friday? How can I budget my time so that I can still enjoy life and still follow all of my passions while also meeting my academic commitments? So you definitely have to find your own rhythm. And then, you know, after you graduate from college, there's that whole work-life balance that comes into play. And for me, I'm actually a mother of 2 sons. I have 2 baby boys. And so in addition to my engineering and writing and all of these other things, I have to find a balance, right? And that good old prioritizing comes in once again to the point where I have to make sure that I'm scheduling all of my responsibilities in an appropriate way so that I can still follow all of my passions within my means of time, because time is definite. You don't have just an infinite amount of time. You have to make sure that you're prioritizing your passions and that you are following all of your different priorities to the T so that you can become successful in all of those different areas of your life.
Great. Does anybody else want to comment on the work-life balance challenges?
I would love to add to that. I tried being very scheduled in undergrad, and I tried the technique that you're talking about, Tiara, of scheduling every single minute, and I could not do it. Oh my gosh, it was very difficult. But what I found, I completely agree with you in that you have to find your rhythm. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it has to work for you. And just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean that you failed at it. It just means something else does. So for me, what I found was I had groups of people that I actually studied with and people that I would like to sit and listen to, which was more of my social time. And so everyone met at different times, and that was one way that I could organize myself in undergraduate, during my undergraduate career, and just finding that niche of like, okay, this is group study. Everyone is going to sit and study together. We're going to be committed to doing this. It did change when I went to postgraduate. So during my master's, it looked very different than during my PhD. Now, when it comes to work-life balance, I've kind of shifted back to scheduling myself to almost every minute. I actually keep a kind of a condensed bullet journal type. It's more like a very fancy to-do list for every single week that I maintain, just because I have multiple positions and I have to, as you said, Tiara, you just have to prioritize. What can you get done? And don't be hard on yourself if you don't get it done that day, just because you assigned it. It can be moved. You can ask for an extension. It's okay to do so. Just knowing that, the dates are there, there are guidelines, not for assignments, get your assignments in, but for everything else, like you can ask for extension and it's okay to do so. No one's going to judge you for it.
Great. We have a question from, did somebody want to add something?
Sorry.
Jessica? Sure, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I really like the idea of prioritizing. I think that is really valuable advice. I would also say to prioritize rest, like scheduling rest and prioritizing breaks. I'm not sure if you've heard the term active rest before, but I find it's very helpful in creating that work-life balance when you're taking a break and you don't feel like you should be working on something else. So you're not taking a break because you're procrastinating, you're taking a break because it's scheduled and you deserve to have a break. Yeah.
That's a great point. We have a question coming in from Leandria, who asks, what are the challenges of being a woman in science? Do you find it to be inclusive in your field, or could it be improved? Mina, yeah?
Oh boy, can it be improved. I mean, you don't know how many meetings I've been where I've been the only woman in the room. And physics, theoretical physics in particular, is one of those fields that it's not balanced at all, and it's not inclusive at all, and we have so much work to do. Why did I do it? Is because I ignored all this, and it's important that to remember that, as always, we do this because we like it. That should be your driving force, and you shouldn't let the fact that you may encounter, for example, in my case, there was a professor once that wouldn't answer my questions, and when I was a student, because he found them very annoying. But then he went and asked my advisor, who was sitting next to me, and my advisor said, I want to ask whatever she's asking. So that fixed him up. But even with things like that, it can be much worse than that, in fact, sometimes. But I mean, if you like something, you'll just do it. And you shouldn't let things like that stop you. It didn't stop us. It shouldn't stop you guys.
Does anyone else want to comment on that from maybe another field, another perspective? Yeah, Rupali?
So I'm going to comment from the perspective of biology, which is one of the more female-dominated sciences that is out there. And currently, the lab that I work in, the research associate position that I have, is a female-led lab. It is a lab that has mostly female graduate students. Most of my cohort was female. The company I work in, all of the senior scientists are female. So there is a lot of females there, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement. There's a lot of room for improvement, because while I am in this situation, I'm also quite aware that this is not the norm. this is not how it goes. There's a lot of female scientists, even in biology, that struggle with trying to get grant money or trying to get heard or be in that position of power and allow for policy changes that need to be made. So is there room for improvement? Absolutely. Does or should that stop you? As Meena said, no, you should still go ahead. There's space for everyone in science. Just because you identify as a specific gender or you identify with a specific background or cultural background, that shouldn't be your reasoning for not going in it because you're not seeing role models. Instead, become that role model so that others will be able to follow you in these fields.
Okay, we've got a very specific question actually for Tiara. I think it's a great question because I'm often confused about this one too. It asks, what actually does it mean to be an aerospace engineer? Are you making rockets that go into space? Are you making rovers? What do you make spacesuits? What do you make as an aerospace engineer?
So in general, as an aerospace engineer, you have access to create aircraft and spacecraft. So within the atmosphere and outside of the atmosphere. So we're talking your good old planes, helicopters, drones, satellites, rockets, rovers, you name it, right? The sky is literally not the limit when it comes to aerospace engineering. For myself, I've been able to work on rockets and planes specifically, but yeah, aerospace engineering is quite a broad field. And not many people recognize that. But inside of aerospace engineering, you can work on materials and structures, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, and also avionics. So yeah, it's a pretty broad field. I would recommend it.
And so what do you work on? What is your focus?
Great question. So I'm a structural design engineer. So I fall under the realm of materials and structures, and I work on NASA's Space Launch System, which is the largest, most powerful rocket ever created in history that will be sending humans to Mars. And you could be one of those humans to be sent to Mars. So you can become an astronaut.
Awesome. We have a question from Hamra. When it comes to subjects like physics and chemistry, I find that I take longer to grasp the concepts rather than it coming to me naturally. This makes me feel less confident. Have you faced this, and how does one overcome that? Has anyone ever had trouble? Jessica, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I actually took high school biology twice, and now I'm a biologist. So I would not say that it's a disadvantage that something doesn't come naturally to you. I would say that having to spend more time learning biology made me more interested in it. Does that make sense? Like, you spend more time working on it and learning about it, so you get a better appreciation for it. And yeah, I think that had a lot to do with why I became a biologist in the first place.
We had a question from Anna in the United States. Can you discuss the ways that soft skills like creativity and communication have benefited you, and do you have any advice for developing those skills? Yeah, Meena?
Yeah, so you would think that theoretical physics is something that has nothing to do with creativity or communication. In fact, people don't know that in fact theoretical physics is a collaborative field, and having good communication skills or creativity, it's very important. You're trying to come up ideas in what I do, into figuring out how nature works. So creativity is ingrained in what we do in my field. So how do you cultivate that? Well, you just take your stupidest idea, you worked it out, and even if it fails, you go back it again to another idea. Or communication skills, practice. As Rupali said, I was actually quite a shy person growing up. And I had to train myself to be more open and give better talks. For example, when I give a scientific presentation, I had to practice, and I gave hundreds of talks before I actually became a bit more confident, not absolutely confident, a bit more confident at it. So again, it's going against your fear, as with everything, and practice. And do not fear about your ideas failing. They will fail, probably. Most of the time they do, but that's not the point. The point is you want the 1 in 100 that will succeed.
Great. Does anybody else want to comment on the soft skill question?
Yes, I would say from an engineering
Yeah,
standpoint.
sure.
Oh, yeah. From an engineering standpoint, soft skills are extremely important, right? Because just as she was saying, you really have to be able to communicate your thoughts, your ideas, all of your different innovative solutions to problems that are happening, right? So from aerospace engineering, the root of aerospace engineering is innovation, correct? So if you can't communicate all of those fantastic ideas that you have in your mind, you can't contribute to that innovation. So it's very important that you practice the way that you communicate. I was also a shy child, okay? My teachers used to always say that you would never understand how smart Tiara is until you spent a lot of time with her, where she became more comfortable to be able to actually talk to you about what's going on in her brain. So don't be like me. Be better than me. Communicate. And when it comes to leadership skills as well, an important quality of leadership is being able to communicate, right? So all of these different soft skills, they play together in order to create innovative solutions to drive innovative teams.
Jessica, did you want to add something too?
Yeah, she said it very well. I think biology as well, you're always trying to push the bounds of science. You're not trying to do things that people have already done. In order to come up with new things to do, you need to be creative. It's just inherent. And now as I'm finishing up my master's and I'm writing my thesis, I will say that communication is my absolute most important skill right now. And I'm starting to wish I was a better communicator.
So we've had a question come in from quite a few people asking, what is a typical day like for you? What is the path of your day on most days? Jessica, do we want to start with you since we've kind of got the spotlight on you, or we'll go over to Tiara, whoever wants to.
I can, oh, of course. I'm wondering if they're asking about right now during the pandemic, or do they mean like a typical day usually?
And maybe we'll go with usually. Hoping that it'll be at some point.
I mean, every day is different. I'm a field biologist, so I get to spend quite a bit of time in the field, on the water, in the water. But yeah, a lot of it is spent in the office. I take classes even as a master's student. I do a lot of reading, a lot of writing. So like a considerably small portion of my time is actually spent in the field doing my research. We also have some lab spaces on campus where I collect samples from the field and then analyze them in the lab. So it's a very big mix of things to do.
Tiara, should we go over to you? Sorry about that.
Okay. That's very cool, by the way, Jessica. So as an aerospace engineer, specifically a structural design engineer, I have the opportunity to look at various different components of these space vehicles. So a lot of that is actually computer-based. So a lot of the work that I do is through computer-aided design, or CAD. So it's all on the computer. But in addition to that, I have to be able to communicate across board to different engineering disciplines in order to actually get those design packages released and approved to then go on the vehicle. So I have to communicate with liaison engineers, manufacturing engineers, quality engineers, structural analysis engineers, the list goes on. And we have to be able to collaborate in such a way that we bring all of our minds together to then figure out the overall design solution that can then be implemented onto the vehicle. So a lot of communication, a lot of technical work in regards to designing and doing different calculations to figure out the structural properties of the components that I'm looking at. And then also I am able to look at the vehicle, actually go on the floor and figure out any sort of issues that are going on, like maybe some sort of installation wasn't necessarily correct, and I have the ability to fix that. So I look at the vehicle, and I'm able to talk to the technicians, the liaison engineers, figure out what's going on to then determine the design solution. So that's structural design engineering in a day.
Awesome. Rupali or Meena, do you want to share about what your days look like?
Sure. So I'm a molecular cellular biologist, so I spend a lot of time in the lab. I'm always envious of those that get to go into the field, and especially summertime when all the field scientists are out and we're stuck being in the lab for many hours. Yeah, we're very envious of those. But I do spend a lot of time in the lab. I work with animals, so every day is a little bit different. I could be collecting tissues from animals, or I could actually be making solutions that I would require to be able to do proper processing. Being a molecular cellular biologist, I spend a lot of time at a microscope and looking at these cells and looking at the tissues under the microscope. I do tag them or stain them with different fluorescent proteins, and so I can get pretty colors on the screen. And this is where creativity comes in as well, because I'm a DIYer, so I do like doing a lot of different things and learning new skills, and I bring that into the lab as well. So anytime that I'm doing protocol development, I actually bring in that creativity, and some days I could spend 10 hours at a microscope just trying to develop a new protocol as to what could work, what type of imaging would be better that would actually allow us to analyze our samples more accurately and be able to put that into papers. So the writing component comes in, but I'll keep it to the fun stuff, which is being in the lab.
Sure. Meena, do you want to comment?
Yeah, so I'm not in a lab, and my sister never fails to point that out, that I don't work in the lab. I actually, well, I can tell you my best days. My best days when I spend it confused is when I spend it confused on a topic that I'm trying to understand, something I'm trying to calculate and figure out. So those days will require reading, will require going back into my notes, going back into calculations, talking to collaborators. Those are the best days for me. And yeah, I'm not, most of the time you may end up with one page of something so it doesn't look like you did anything, but that page could be important.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question now from Hajra. How do you know that the career path you're taking is the right one? And what if you have doubts? Yes, Meena? Yeah.
Okay, so you know that you're doing the thing you like to do when things go bad and you still want to do it. It's when things are going well and it's easy to be complacent and be happy with something. But when things go bad and you still want to do it, then this is when you know where your path is. When I was doing I should say that when I started my PhD, I started doing experimental condensed matter, material science. So I was still doing a PhD in physics, but it was a completely different topic. And I realized that the reason that I was doing it is because I thought I wouldn't be good at doing theoretical physics. Eventually, when things were going bad in that direction, I would feel bored and frustrated. And I switched and I said, okay, I'll try theoretical physics. This is what I want to do. And it was really hard in the beginning. But I mean, still hard sometimes, but I don't want to give up. So this is how I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Anybody else? Yes, Rupali?
I am looking forward to this question because I'm someone who changed fields after almost every degree that I did. So when I was in high school and going into undergraduate, I was determined that I would be a physician. I would go to medical school. And that was the mindset that I had for 2 years of my undergraduate career. By the time I hit third year, I realized I actually enjoyed solving puzzles a lot more. And I was introduced to research. And I had no idea that you could even be a scientist before then. That's how sheltered my experiences were, in that what I saw was, if you want to go into science, you become a physician. So it wasn't until third year that I realized you could be a scientist. Scientists still exist and do research now in today's day and age. And the path to becoming a researcher was you go into doing a master's and then a PhD. So my master's was working with fruit flies, and I was working on fruit fly embryos. And then I switched fields. So I went from fruit flies into working with mice and working with the intestines of mice, which was completely different. And then after my PhD, I switched fields again and I went into immunology, never having taken a single course in immunology throughout my undergraduate, master's, or PhD careers. So I went into a field that I had no idea about, and I did that for 3 years. And then now the company that I'm a senior scientist with, it's a company that focuses on diabetes, and I've never done anything in terms of diabetes before, but it's skills. At every single point, you learn those skills, and just don't be afraid to try it. It's okay to change your mind if you don't want to be in a specific field, or you're not enjoying that field anymore, or you thought you were going to enjoy it, but you're not. It's okay to switch, and it's okay to change your mind. And even if you were enjoying it, but now it's not a passion, something else has become a passion, it's okay to switch.
That's great advice. Looking here, we've got a question from Mayham, who's in grade 10. They share, what extracurriculars should I take in order to pave my way towards a career or post-secondary option in STEM? Any tips for things that you could maybe do in high school that would be good to do? Yeah, Jessica?
I guess this goes back to what Rupali was saying, but it's really important to get experience. Like, you don't really know if you're going to enjoy something until you try it. I personally know people that have been so dead set on doing a certain degree, and they take all their courses and they love them, but then they get in the lab and they try it out and they think, wow, I never want to do this again. This was terrible. It's totally fine. So I would say experience is the most valuable thing. So whatever that looks like, if you have an idea of what you might want to do for your career, your extracurriculars should give you experience in that in some way. Just, try it out. See if it's something that you like.
I totally agree. And with that being said, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into only trying one thing, right? Like, you have many different passions, I'm assuming. So why not pursue all of them? You don't have to limit yourself. And that goes on into even after you graduate and start your career, you can still have a multifaceted career. Just as Rupali was talking about, she had a chance to venture through all of her different passions throughout her time so far. And I'm sure that it'll be something else next. And that's okay. That's completely fine, because as a human, you're evolving and so are your passions. So I would say assess the passions that you have, and then try and find different organizations or programs there's a lot online now. So take advantage of that, right? So try and find a program, whether it is online or local, that you can attend and figure out what you want to do, or just try something new.
That's great. Several people asked, this is a little bit related to that work-life balance question, but several people asked, do you have any tips on staying productive and not procrastinating? Maybe we'll all learn from each other.
I have a great app that I use that keeps me off my phone. It's called Forest, and it allows you to you set up a timer, and it'll grow a tree, a digital tree on your phone, and you can create a garden, however you want your garden to look. It can be everything from like watermelons to pumpkins to pine trees, it doesn't matter. So you can make your own digital garden, but after you have completed a certain number of hours on there, the developers of the app actually help plant real trees somewhere in the world. So it's something that also gives back to the environment, but it's a great way to keep me off my phone and let this tree grow. And so that at the end of the day, I can look at my garden.
Anyone else have any tips?
So I find that procrastinating seems to be something that continues to pop up when it comes to being in high school and college, because there's just so many fun things going on, and truly our attention spans are still developing. So with that being said, in addition to that app idea, I'm going to have to try that. I would say to go back to what we were talking about before, factoring in those breaks in order to refresh your mind so that you can have a better focus. Because the reality of it is that if you're staring at an assignment and you're not contributing to that assignment and you've been staring at it for an hour, like, how does that help, right? So if you were to take a short break to then replenish your mind, and so when you go back to the assignment, you can actually contribute something to it and finish it in 15 minutes. That's much more valuable than just staring at it. So I would say to factor in breaks and make sure that you refocus not only just your brain towards the assignment, but just your brain as a whole. We're humans, so it takes a bit of time for us to gain that focus and that balance in order to concentrate on something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very important to define procrastination. Like if you've been working on something for 2 hours and then you find you're having a hard time focusing, like it's very possible it's just your brain telling you that you need a break. Like we're humans, we weren't made to focus on something for 6 hours a day with no stops. I'm more guilty than ever now with the pandemic, but of eating in front of my laptop. And I think that's been a really bad habit I've gotten into. So yeah, take time to think and reflect on whether this is true procrastination or whether it's your body telling you that you need a break.
Very good advice. We're going to take our last question now. This one actually comes from several people. What is something you wish you had known before you started in your career in STEM, or what you wish you had known in high school? So maybe one of either of those. If you could go back to your younger self.
This could be very specific to me, but I wish that I had known how broad of a field aerospace engineering truly was, because I always just had this passion to be an aerospace engineer since I was 11. I was like, I want to be an aerospace engineer, but it's just so broad. So I wish I would have done more research into that career that I was interested in at the time, so that I could understand all of the different possibilities that are out there before even getting to college, where I then had to down select and figure out what my interest really truly was inside of aerospace engineering. So I would say that I wish I would have done more research earlier on so that I could have done all of those different programs that we were talking about that were actually catered towards structural design, because one, I probably would have had a lot more fun, and two, it would have been great to gain that extra insight before entering into college.
Anyone else have some thoughts on that? Like to share? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I have another thought. I grew up in a small town. I'm a first generation university student, meaning that my parents did not go to university, or any of my grandparents, or I had no relatives that had really done like master's degrees or anything. And so the only impression of university I had was what I had seen in movies, what I thought university was going to be like. Specifically professors, I thought the professors were just these like unmistakable gods that were so smart and knew everything about everything. And I had a very hard time seeing myself in their shoes. Like I thought that maybe I would want to be a professor and go into research, but it was very difficult to imagine myself in that place. But I tell students this all the time now. The more I learn from professors and speak to them, the more I realize that they are humans and they make mistakes. And the more you don't be afraid to approach them or email them. They're busy people, but they like interacting. They like talking about their research. Yeah, I wish I would have been more confident to approach professors and not be so scared of them at first.
I agree with both of those. The confidence bit, just having enough confidence to go and speak to professors. They can feel really unapproachable or daunting to go and speak to them, but they're humans, and you can have conversations with them. But the other thing I would tell, if I could go back and tell my younger self, is not put as much pressure on myself that whatever I chose in the first year is going to determine the rest of my career, and let myself actually explore different options and fit in and fall into that passion, as Tira was saying, just have the confidence and give myself permission to have that explorative year of trying different things out and seeing what fits me and what do I fit well with, and then pursuing that a little bit more, and not determining that if I chose this one thing and that is it, I must stick to it.
That's great. We're going to close our panel today, and I'd like to give you guys each an opportunity to give a closing message to the students that have joined us. I think what we'll do is we'll start with Mina. We'll go in a different order.
Hi. Well, the message I think to get today for me is, do not let lack of confidence, do not let fear distract you from trying something. You should try and fail. That's fine. Then you'll find something else that you're better at, or that you like more. So that's the main takeaway. And this is what I would also tell my younger self, actually, not to be afraid. And being afraid is okay too. We all are, and I still am in many ways, but do not let your fear and your lack of confidence or stop you from trying to find what makes you happy in life. Doesn't have to be STEM, by the way. It can be many other things.
Sure. Jessica?
Yeah, it's a tough question, but I think it is very important to remember, I guess this applies to science and not just, applies to life and not just science, but that everyone else that you see is always just putting their best face forward. So you usually only ever hear about the accomplishments and the positive things they get, but it's important to remember that people fail, they're just not as open about it. So you may feel like you've failed or have had more challenges than other people, but it's not necessarily true. I think it's important to surround yourself with a good community that will support you when you face those challenges, rather than pretending that everything's always going to be okay.
Tiara?
I agree with both of those pieces of advice. And I would add to that to not undervalue any of your passions. You would be very surprised how your passions could spiral into a career of your choice that would make you absolutely happy. You know, sometimes when it comes to our passions, the career choice may not be as clear cut. And maybe that means that you're creating a new path, right? You're being innovative in your life. And somebody who's coming behind you would possibly be passionate in that as well, and you're breaking that barrier into that field. So I would say to address all of your passions, don't leave any of them to the wayside, and make sure that you follow your dreams unapologetically. And just echoing what they were just saying, make sure that you have the confidence in order to pursue those dreams and put your best foot forward, and understand that you will fall sometimes, but you just have to get back up.
Awesome. And Rupali?
I second everything that's been said so far. I guess the only thing that I can add is be authentic to yourself, and don't forget who you are as a person, and let yourself and what feels right to you drive those decisions for yourself, because you have to live your life. No one else is living your life. Let your gut feeling help you make those decisions as well, and don't push it aside because of what is the fad right now and what everyone else is doing right now. Whether it's STEM or not STEM, it doesn't matter.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We actually covered quite a bit of ground. We got lots of questions in, which has been awesome. I'd like to thank all four of you very much for sharing your insights and for your stories. It's been very inspiring to hear about all these different fields and the different projects you guys have pursued. Thanks to all of the people who are attending today for contributing so many questions. And I'd also like to thank the teachers that participated today and also spread the word to our participants for being able to attend. As we close, please join me in welcoming Lyndon Hasenfratz, the CEO of our presenting sponsor, Linamar. Based in Guelph, Linamar is an advanced manufacturing company, and we welcome their ongoing support as the presenting sponsor of this conference. Linda joined Linamar in 1990 and has experienced all aspects of the business, including running a machine, engineering, and operations management. She's been watching the event online and has joined us so that she can share some closing remarks. Over to you, Linda.
Thanks so much, Kelly, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure for me to be here and wrap up today's event. I hope you all enjoyed the panel discussion as much as I did. Such great advice. And literally, these women could have written the words that I'm about to say. It's like I knew ahead of time the wonderful advice that they gave. So a few thoughts. First of all, our Inspiring Future Women in Science conference is obviously a little different this year. We've been involved for quite a few years, and I love it. It's different. Last 12 months have been different, but I still think it's just really impactful, and hopefully it's got you all thinking a little bit more about the idea of what you want to study once you get out of high school, and hopefully thinking about studying and a career in science, technology, engineering, or math. So as you heard, I am CEO of Linamar. It's a global diversified advanced manufacturing company. And we're really excited to be the presenting sponsor for this conference because I just love the idea of encouraging more young women into a career in STEM as I have done myself. So a little bit of advice I like to give young people, really 3 pieces of advice, some of which you've already heard. So number one, when you're trying to decide where am I going from here, pick an area of study that interests you. You heard that from the panelists. Like, what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What are you curious about? What do you enjoy learning about? So that's number one. Number two, do a little bit of research around what are the jobs that I could do when I study in that area. What's the demand for people in those jobs, and just know like what that is. And then research a little bit, what's the earnings potential of those jobs, and does it line up with the lifestyle you envision? And everybody envisions something different. Some people might be here, some people might be here. It's what makes sense to you, right? Like everybody's plan should be very individual and what matters for you. And personally, I think science and technology are just great choices for anyone who's naturally curious about the world around them. I know I was as a child and how it works. And there's just such huge demand for people in these careers and great earnings potential. So I feel like it really checks all 3 of those boxes. And certainly that's how I felt when I was making decisions when I was your age. Now, I do want to add, and again, this came up in the panel as well, that just because you've done this research, you've checked those boxes, doesn't mean you're committed to that path for the rest of your life, right? I think that what you'll find is through your life, you're going to take some right turns, you're going to take some left turns along the way. You don't know what's coming down the road, right? You don't have to know today. You don't have to fully complete, your life plan when you're 16 or 17 years old. But, I do think it's a great idea, if you like it, to pick something like STEM that will have lots of options for you and then see where life takes you. I've found that when people make those right and left turns, it actually makes them like completely uniquely qualified to do exactly what they end up doing. So don't be too stressed about these choices. Life can and will change, and that's okay. So I know you're thinking, are there many women in these areas of study? And you've heard different impressions around that. And it does really differ depending on, what area of STEM you're studying in. But I think that in general, I can tell you that the numbers are really increasing, that there's momentum building of more and more women in these fields. Like I look at engineering as an example. We have like 20 times the women in engineering that we did 25 years ago, and momentum is building. I look at schools like the University of Toronto. It's one of our top ranked universities in our country of Canada. World recognized engineering program is 42% women in engineering, and they're not alone. University of Waterloo, Western, University of Guelph, a lot of other universities here in Canada, and many others have more and more women enrolled in all kinds of STEM programs. So I think that's amazing because of all those great career opportunities, and there's momentum building, and we should all be taking steps to share those statistics and share those stories of these women. So give me 1 second. I just want to share my screen with you. I want to share an initiative that we've been working on at Linamar that I think that you might find really interesting and learn a little something about, that you'd be interested in learning something about. Hold on, it's taking me a little longer than hoped to do this. Okay, here it is. So this is an initiative that we started at Linamar back in 2018, and it's called See It, Be It, STEM It. And the whole idea is to encourage more young women into science and engineering studies through the use of role models. So we created a website. It's called seeitbeitstemit.com. Here's a few examples of some of the stories that are posted there. We actually have over 235 stories posted of role models, inspirational women in a whole variety of STEM careers. And we also take 12 of those women every year and feature them in a calendar. And the idea is let's keep the conversation going all year long. Every month, flip to a new story that you want to share about different women and their stories of what they've studied. We've actually given away 50,000 of these calendars for free in the past 3 years. And I would love to send a box to your school. So if you guys are interested in learning more about our role model stories, we would love to send them to you. Just let the folks at Perimeter know, and we can do that. We also hold all kinds of events, kind of like what we're doing right now with our role models, panels, and we also have an Instagram account. So I hope you guys will consider checking that out and being a little bit inspired by all of these different role models. I also hope, while I have your attention, that I'd like to get our panelists to all sign up to be role models on See It, Be It, STEM It. So please check it out. It's super easy to do. You just click a button to put yourself on the website, and we'll get you on there. You're all so inspiring, and I just know our followers would love to get to know you. So just a last couple comments, because I know we're wrapping up. When I started out in the automotive industry, I was often the only one in the room, like Mina talked about, or one of only a couple. But that has totally changed. Thanks in many ways to all these more and more women in STEM roles, like the ones on our website. And in the auto industry as well, there's so many more women in very senior key roles in both the automaker and supplier side, which is great, including the CEO of one of the largest automakers in the world, General Motors, who is a woman, Mary Barra, and she's doing amazing things with that company. I also feel like I personally never felt that the lack of women in the industry was an issue for me. And that's probably because, just like Mina, I didn't let it. I didn't let myself become defensive about it. I didn't let it become an issue for me. And I found if I kind of ignored it, like other people do too, right? Just don't kind of dial into those negative frequencies. Just stay focused, study hard, do your job well, be that smart, capable, wonderful person that you are. And people pretty quickly forget about preconceptions they may have had about you. You just have to keep performing and you'll get the attention. So I hope you've learned something about STEM today. I hope you've been inspired. When I look at all the exciting jobs out there, manufacturing being a great example, that's the industry that I'm in. Manufacturing, there's actually never been a more exciting time frame where the technological evolution, thanks to amazing advances in technologies and the power of computing and machine learning, is transforming our industry so much and giving us the opportunity to do some really exciting things, to solve some really important issues, right? whether it's around eliminating emissions or improving our atmosphere, or developing technologies to ensure clean water is available to world's communities. This is what manufacturing companies are actively doing. And with the advent of advanced robotics and other technology advances, we're really transforming how we do it. Like, we have very, very few people, like, fewer and fewer in any case, actually on the shop floor, like loading and unloading machines. We have way more programmers, designers, tool developers, robotics technicians, logistics coordinators, the list goes on, of really interesting and high paying jobs. So it's an exciting industry to become involved in. So I hope you're inspired into a career in STEM. I was certainly inspired listening to our panel today. And I hope that, you guys think about doing something like that in the future. I think you've made the first step in the right direction by signing on today to learn a little from our panel. Again, I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope you have a fantastic evening. So, Kelly, that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I'll just second that the calendars are really beautiful. So if you can get your hands on one, it's really fun to flip through and see month to month all these amazing stories. As we close, I'd like to thank Linamar again for their ongoing support of Women in Science as presenting sponsor of this event. In our time zone, we're sort of coming to the end of International Day of Women and Girls in Science, but we have other activities that are continuing online. There will be a recording of this event that will be made available soon on Perimeter Institute's YouTube channel. We also have an online escape room activity that's inspired by the work of scientists that are featured in our Forces of Nature poster series. And we also have a summer program for high school students who want to dive deeper into theoretical physics. Links to all of these activities will be provided to you in your post-event email. That you'll be getting soon after we close. So thank you again to all of our panelists for coming today and participating and sharing their stories. Hopefully we'll be able to see you in person, and hopefully sometime soon.